Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Chain of Command. This movie tells about a former elite soldier named James Webster, who attends a ceremony held by his brother. When he discusses something secret with a person in his garden, James becomes suspicious. That same night, he got a call from his brother's wife. His brother was brutally murdered. Now he is plagued by a longing for revenge and to uncover the secret that brought his brother underground. After he digs deeper for information to track down his brother's murderers, he discovers a military conspiracy in the middle of the US government and a large drug ring in which his former colleague, Lieutenant Ross, is involved. The masterminds of the conspiracy sense danger and hire the assassin and killer, Ray Peters, who also comes from James' former elite unit. Will James and his former elite unit team catch his brother's murderer and pass the mission? Let's find out in Chain of Command. Chain of Command begins with several members of the SWAT team gathering after completing a mission. They were James, Cliff, Sam, and Walter. They also brought their wives and female friends to the community. One of the women was Stacy, a well-known journalist and old friend of James. After James made small talk with Stacy, his older brother, Walter, received a phone call. Walter looked panicked, and while he kept the phone to his ear, he stormed into the house. He followed inside and asked Walter what was really going on out of curiosity. But Walter said everything was fine and he would sort things out himself. After that, he went straight home with his wife. In the evening, while James was relaxing, his cell phone rang. The call was from Walter's wife, who told him that Walter had died. At that moment, he immediately rushed to Walter's house. Sure enough, he saw that Walter had been killed with a slash to his neck. When James returns home, he gets a call from Cliff, who begs him to hurry to his apartment because Cliff is in danger. He immediately rushed to Cliff's house. But unfortunately, he came too late. Cliff was slashed to death, just like Walter. He then checks Cliff's cell phone and finds a message from someone named Bill O'Brien. After that, he decided to further check Cliff's apartment. But when he entered a room, he was ambushed. Luckily, James managed to turn things around and beat the man. Then he interrogates him to find out his identity and whom he works for. But he would not open his mouth. James shot him in the leg and asked again without further ado, but he cursed him instead. He shot him dead, realizing he couldn't get anything from him. After that, James went to meet his best friend, Lieutenant Ross, who was also Walter and Cliff's boss during the war in Afghanistan. He tells him that now they are dead, but Ross only advises him not to do anything about it and leave the investigation to the police. Burned with a vengeance, James ignores Ross's suggestion. He will still avenge the killers of Walter and Cliff ruthlessly. Then he asked if Ross knew anyone named Bill O'Brien. It turns out he knows him. He was one of his men in Afghanistan. He also joins the war with them. When James was about to go home, suddenly Cliff's cell phone rang. The caller was Bill O'Brien. But when he answered the phone, the call was turned off. From this, he is increasingly convinced that O'Brien must have something to do with Cliff and Walter's deaths. Meanwhile, a businessman named Ted Bomer hires the best hitman, Ray, to find the stolen $40 million. He tells Ray to go to Lieutenant Ross first to begin his search. He immediately goes to him and asks who had stolen the money. He said the culprits were none other than Walter and Cliff, and it was him who killed them both. After discussion, they finally believe that the $40 million are in James' hands. Stacy is now visiting James herself at his house. Not long after that, two people came knocking on the door. They claimed to be officers assigned to check gas in every home in the complex. James let them in. It turns out they were soldiers. Even though he let them in, James already suspected that the two men had been sent to arrest him. His instincts were right. And so, after their cover was exposed, he, assisted by Stacy, finished them both off. From their corpses, he then found their identity cards. Ross finally heard the news that the two people he sent were killed by James. Then he hacked into military databases to find information about O'Brien. After a while, he managed to trace his address. Meanwhile, James calls Sam and asks him to be vigilant. In the evening, James arrives at O'Brien's empty house. But not long after, he saw some suspicious people who were about to sneak into the house. He knew that they were going to catch him. But again, with his military and martial skills, he managed to kill them all. After that incident, Ross and Ray thought hard about how to effectively kill James and get the money back. And to make matters worse, they still don't even know where the money is being kept. Therefore, to get him to reveal the location of the capital, they devise a plan to take Sam into custody. In the afternoon, James meets Sam in search of O'Brien. But before they left, he had to pee first. As he entered the restroom, someone with a syringe followed behind him. Luckily, before the man plunged the needle into him, James stepped in and stopped him. He then asked whom he was working for, but he said his boss would definitely kill his family if he told him. Without giving him another chance, James injected the needle into him. After that, James got some intel from his military friends, and then he went to a bar that O'Brien was said to frequent. O'Brien himself was in the bar, but when he asked about O'Brien, some people at the bar told him to leave. He followed their orders. He left, but after he beat some of them. O'Brien then got into his car, but apparently, he was waiting for him inside. Pointing his gun at O'Brien's head, he asked what connection he had with Cliff and Walter. He simply replied that he was their friend. This is where everything starts to unfold. O'Brien recounted that while he was serving in Afghanistan, Lieutenant Ross invited him to join an illegal operation to smuggle drugs from Afghanistan to America by inserting them into the bodies of soldiers who had died on the battlefield. In that operation, Cliff and Walter were forced to participate. The three of them really wanted to get out of this illicit mission, but Ross forbade them because they had brought two involved. They were forced to continue the illegal operation, until one day, they stole all the money from the operation to make it evidence of a crime. Hearing O'Brien's story, James asks to be taken to the place where he runs his operations. That evening, James, O'Brien, and Sam went to the warehouse. They got off while Sam stood guard in the car. Silently, James knocked out the guards outside one by one. Then he and O'Brien sneaked inside and split up to look for evidence. After a while of searching, James managed to find a pile of drugs ready to be distributed in America. But unfortunately, O'Brien was caught by one of Ross's men and was shot dead. Hearing the gunshots, James kept his eyes in the sound's direction. Finally, he finished off the person who had killed O'Brien with just one shot. At the same time, Ross had just arrived with the rest of his men. They managed to catch poor Sam, who was still on guard in the car. Ross and some of his men then enter the building to arrest James, and a gunfight ensues. Luckily, James managed to get out of the warehouse. In the middle of the night, one of Ross's men came out of the building and headed home. Unbeknownst to him, James had followed him to his house. He then approached the bald man to ask who the person Ross ordered to execute Walter. James threatened the man. If he didn't want to tell him, James would kill his family. Frightened, the man finally replied that the one who executed Walter was Hammond, Lieutenant Ross' right-hand man. After he got what he wanted, James shot the man in the head. The next day, Ross calls James and offers to exchange Sam for the stolen money. James himself did not know where the money was, but he nevertheless agreed to the offer. Unfortunately, Ross broke his promise. During the exchange, his men finish off Sam, and before James could react, they shot him. James was then taken to a place to be tortured. The person who tortured him claimed that he was Hammond, the one who killed Walter. He also saw Ray, someone he knew when he was a soldier in the Special Forces. He didn't expect Ray to become a hitman. Ray then asked James where the stolen money was, but James still wouldn't tell him. Therefore, Ross's men show him Walter's wife, who has been taken as a hostage, making James panic. He immediately admitted that he knew nothing about the money. He just pretended to know because he wanted to save Sam. Moments later, Ross arrived in front of the building, and his men rushed out to greet him. James immediately used the opportunity to release his bound hands. By the time Hammond returned, James was ready for an ambush. He hits Hammond with a wooden block and kills him. After that, he killed all of Ross's men. Leaving his sister-in-law to safety, James then comes face to face with Ray and Ross, whom he calls a disgrace to the country. But Ray simply said that being a soldier only made his life miserable. There are no rewards in money after risking one's life on the battlefield. After they finished mocking each other, they finally started shooting at each other. Ray then backed away, looking for an opportunity to shoot James and let Ross escape. They got into a shootout, but in the end, he died after James shot him in the chest. After that, James chased Ross, who was trying to escape. The chase finally ended after he managed to corner him. Because there was no other way, this time, Ross had to duel against him. James was cornered several times, primarily when his opponent fought with a knife, while he himself only had his bare hands. But in the end, he managed to kill Lieutenant Ross. After all that was done, he and his sister-in-law immediately left the place. At the end of the film, James tells Stacy to bring up the news about Lieutenant Ross and his illegal activities so that similar incidents will not happen again in the future. But then, he suddenly remembered the yard that Cliff had trampled. Curious, he then dug it up. There is a savings account worth $40 million in James' name. He was taken aback, not at all expecting Walter to have planned it all from the start. He then plans to use some of the money to help war veterans. The moral that can be learned from this film is that it is best for people to keep their wickedness a secret. In the end, their genuine will be leaked. And when that time comes, they must be ready to accept the consequences of what they do.